I've given this design here a go, and soon after I completed it, I discovered a major design flaw. Maybe you can already see it in the design, or you've seen it. Here's the prototype, and here's the problem with it. Is this part, which goes in here, but as you can tell, it has way too much wiggle room. It is not guided properly in here. It cannot move up and down properly. Once it goes beyond this stage here, it's pretty much loose. It can go left and right. I've made another design, a variation of this on paper, which might solve those problems. I basically made it higher so that this moving part here is constantly touching edges here that guide it up and down. I might have to cut some slots into this part and this part so that it can't move sideways this way. That might solve it, but I'm still afraid that I'll have too much friction on the sides. Oh, that was another problem with this approach here. This angle here was too steep or too shallow, whichever way you look at it. Too much force pushing it against here, friction causing it to get stuck here. Just too fiddly to perfect, so I made the angle a little bit higher here so that it would push more upwards than horizontally. And that might work. Yeah, but I'm not sure if the friction is still too much of a problem. It makes this construction pretty high and bulky. I don't know if I like that. The other problem, potential problem, is you see on the prototype here that this is very thin. That's because it has to fit into my current pinball machine. In a follow-up version I might make this wider, but as it is this wide. And it makes the sides very thin because, of course, the marble has to fit in between here. Yeah, it's kind of thin. I had to put this tooth stick in here. That's what the rubber bands would attach to. Yeah, not sure if this is strong enough. Might break. All in all, the actual building of it showed me the weaknesses, and that's why I think I'm going to, before perfecting this one, I'm going to go back to this design. I actually did already. I made a variation of it because I discovered that I can do this differently than using rubber bands here to operate this hook. So what I'm going to try is, I've replaced the rubber bands with partial gear, if you will. So this would be rotating around this way. Only a few gears here so that they turn it enough to push this hook down to act as a stop for the subsequent balls. And after that it should hopefully just stay there because of the weight of this hook and the fact that there's balls pushing against it. You can pull the ball shooter all the way back, and then as it's pushed forward again, the teeth should engage and then push the hook up again. That's the plan anyway. The critical part is right here. If I don't get this to work reliably, which it has to for hundreds or thousands of times, it's not going to work. So I did take this design and built a working version of that, and it took quite some time to get it right, but I'm quite happy with the result. It works reliably, and this is what it looks like. I'll open it up and show you some of the tweaks that I had to make it work. So as expected, the hardest part to get right were these gears here that are pushing this lever up and down. I ended up having to make them out of metal. This is aluminum, because this pusher here has quite some force when pushing into here. I'd initially made gears out of wood and they were very quickly disintegrated. So I put a strip of aluminum in here and 2 here, and it doesn't take more than that, as you can see. This part on the pusher here pushes this part up, and going backwards it pushes it down, and that's all I need. One of the modifications I had to make is to make this hook wider here, because there was a possibility that a ball could kind of get stuck between this part and the hook in here, so I put a little piece of wood in there so that that can't happen. Another modification I made is this stop here for the lever, because otherwise the force of pushing it upwards could potentially fling it out here, and I didn't want that, of course, so I made a stop right here for that so that it doesn't do that. Another tweak is this plastic strip right here. Not sure if you can see that. This plastic strip prevents the balls from being flung back out as the lever is pushed up. The other balls can be hit by that, and the force is enough to be able to push them out again, so I made the stop here so that that doesn't happen. Next thing that I did is to make a slot in here for this part to slide into, and then a little stop here, so I have a stop going backwards and here a stop going forwards. Like I said, it took a lot of tweaking, mainly because the tolerances are pretty tight. I had to get everything just right so that it would push not too far, because I didn't want this to hit the stop very hard, and getting it to turn just enough and not too far. So I think I got the dimensions right now, and it's working well. The other thing that I did was I made this kind of a front loader, because as the assembly sits like this, there's no space for rubber bands going over this part or behind here. It's all covered up. So I had to make a way to attach the rubber bands at the front. And this is simply a metal piece of wire that is bent backwards slightly so that the rubber bands don't slip out.